Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is our self-awareness and identity exploration session. Today, we're going to have a really good speaker, one of your own fellow OFCV, for now alumni, because she just recently graduated this year. We're excited to have her come back and present for us. Well, she's done quite a few presentations for us throughout different programs, and we're excited to have Jazmin back today. Just wanted to again welcome everyone to the OFCV Student Leadership Conference. As I mentioned, this is a self-awareness and identity exploration session that will be facilitated by Jazmin Rojas. Jazmin, happy to have you here. I know you're gonna introduce yourself and probably share a little bit about yourself, but as a background, Jazmin is looking to go into a career in psychiatry, and we're excited to see what she's gonna be doing in the next upcoming steps of her journey. And we're happy to have you again, Jazmin.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Fatima. For the purposes of our self-awareness and identity presentation today, I'm actually going to hold my own identity for a bit. That way I can reveal myself little by little and, get the party started to see if using any pre-existing knowledge that you may have on what identity may mean, what self-awareness may mean to you. As mentioned earlier, today we're going to be discussing self-awareness and identity, trying to achieve authenticity one day at a time. Quick disclaimer, the information presented today is not therapy. It's more as a resource for you to see if anything you like or may dislike, you can totally embed into your own routine. If you do find yourself in a situation for help, please contact the OneFuture Coachella Valley team for further assistance. And then also, if you wait till the end of the presentation, I have a couple of resources to share for y'all. So today we're going to be talking about self-awareness, the kinds of self-awareness, identity, and also putting self-awareness and identity together to live an authentic life. Before you know me, who are you? Let's go ahead and do like a quick 3-minute reflection on who are you. You don't have to share, this is more of your own personal stance. And if you need some guidance when you can't really answer, who are you? Try to think of what do you believe in, what motivates you, and what makes you upset? Why do you feel the way you feel, etc. So do it on a piece of paper. Feel free to type it out on your notes. Try to see if you see any identity, any self-awareness things, anything like preconceived knowledge on who I am. So I'm Jazmin Rojas Munares. My pronouns are she, they. I am a female identifying Hispanic. I'm a Desert Hot Springs High School graduate, class of 2017, first generation college grad from the University of California, Irvine. I was also a OneFuture Coachella Valley scholar last year, so I was in your shoes around this time last year. I'm also a plant mom, a hiker, and a music enthusiast. I play the flute and the trumpet. I'm also an Aquarius. My birthday is January 25th. I identify as an empathetic and compassionate, yet stubborn, independent, and funny person. And this is the happiest I've been in a long time. So using my own identity, try to see if you can identify any identity features and any self-awareness features. And a quick one, a good self-awareness one, is that this is the happiest I've been in a long time. I've managed to really reflect and put 2 and 2 together and be like, you know what, this is a good point in my life. Self-awareness. I really like this quote by Debbie Ford. And they say, self-awareness is the ability to take an honest look at your life without the attachment to it being right or wrong. And pay attention to right or wrong. When it comes to you, there is no really right or wrong, right? It's just about being you and really existing. And so when we're talking about self-awareness, it's being able to perceive your own existence, including your own traits, feelings, and behaviors. And because self-awareness is something that you kind of have to sit down and really think about on your own, look at your past, look at your present, and your potential future, it's more of an introspection and more of a reflection activity to what you just did. So if you're willing and able to, feel free to hold on to your notes that you typed out or wrote down on who you are and take a look at it after the presentation and try to write that all over again, because now you'll have this kind of knowledge and you'll see, hey, this is really who I am. Once you do that, you can really see how your own behavior and how your own existence can really impact others and also yourself. Like, think about it. Are you kind of a person who talks to yourself very kindly, or are you very harsh? If you've heard, we are our biggest own critics, there you go, my bad. We are our biggest critics. So it's very important to kind of reflect and sit down, because during quarantine, I noticed that I was sad, right? And I really couldn't pinpoint what was going on. And so I really just said, hey, I'm just going to mess around on my phone, go through my camera roll and see what's going on. Like, I like looking on memories, right? And so that's when I really put 2 and 2 together. I was sad because of quarantine. Quarantine meant I was always at home, and at home I was always in sweatpants. And I was looking at my camera roll, and I really like jeans. I really like thrifted clothes. I really like, expressing myself through my clothing. And so that kind of really put things into perspective and kind of felt empowering because I was able to identify what part of me needed attention and what part of me needed improvement, right? And so this empowering power of self-awareness can really help you understand your personality. And you can basically identify what are your strengths, what are you really good at, what are your weaknesses, like what can we improve on, your thoughts, beliefs, and ideals, as well as any emotions and motivators. Thinking what's going on right now, what is my current state, and just kind of putting two and two together one step at a time. So self-awareness can be as easy as 1, 2, 3. Self-awareness can really just look like stopping and reflecting. So when something happens, what did we do that did work or what didn't work? Should we do it again? How did it make me feel? And so that's kind of a situation when you can really pause and reflect on what your situation is. Should it continue? Should it stop? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? Was the uncomfortable part good, or was it like just a situation of absolute no, right? And this allows you to recognize your skills. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? Focus on the good stuff, but also, get help for the things you're not so good. And asking yourself the same question again, did it make you feel uncomfortable? So barriers to self-awareness. We have so many things going on. We're so used to living a fast-paced life that doesn't really allow us to really reflect on who we are. We're so, dominated by deadlines. Personally, in school, I was very deadline-based. Just, I have to get this done. I have to get this done. I have to go to this club. I have to study. I have midterms. I have a job. I have homework. And it just gets so overwhelming, right? And this is kind of dangerous because when you start living through numbers, through deadlines, through assignments, through your employer, you live a very unfulfilled life. You kind of lose purpose of what's going on, right? And so with this self-awareness really puts things into perspective. What am I doing for me compared to what am I doing for others? At the end of the day, this is our own life, we live for us and us only, and people hop along the path. I like to say we are so much more than students, right? I am also a friend. I am also a daughter. I am also XYZ, but no one ever says I am just me. And so this is the important part. And hopefully we get to get rid of that barrier and really give time for ourselves, like what we really deserve. This self-awareness isn't always positive. I know I might be hyping it up a little bit too much, but what happens when you kind of realize that you're a seeker or a pleaser? Being a seeker is you don't know who you are. You don't know what you stand for, and you don't know how others see you. So this is kind of like depending on others to really put a label on you, right? It's kind of dominating what others want to see you as rather than what you want to see yourself as. And as a consequence, you might feel stuck and frustrated with your relationships because it's true. Like, how can you expect yourself to build good relationships with people if you don't really know who you are and what you like, right? Whereas pleasers is the complete other way. You're focused on appearing a particular way. So let's just say, I really know my boss likes the color pink. So every day I'm going to wear the color pink. And it isn't until you realize like, hey, I don't even like the color pink. I'm really doing it for my boss. Or I'm also really doing it for my significant other. They don't like when I have curly hair. And so now you always wear your hair straight. Those are little examples, right? And so it's really important now that we're, at an age where we're kind of figuring out our own identities, kind of figuring out, how we like to express ourselves. It's really important not to overlook it because at the end of the day, you might be doing things in the sake of trying to appeal to others, right? And so really think if these choices that you are making are servicing you or not. So what are the benefits of being self-aware? When you really know who you are and what you feel in the moment, at least, can really help with confidence, self-esteem, just because, you know what's going on internally. Also helping with creativity, kind of gets rid of that brain fog when you're so occupied on like what's going on in the world. How can I place myself in the situation? There's not a lot of room for creativity and really, just flourishing on what's going on internally. And this really helps with decision-making as well. When you know what you want to do, what you feel at the moment, let's just say right now, I kind of really feel like eating something good. It's as simple as, I want this restaurant. It's kind of like a joke when you ask a person, well, where do you want to go eat? I don't know. Where do you want to go eat? And it's just it's a back and forth. But even through self-awareness, I really like Korean food. So every time somebody asks me, I'm very quick with it. Oh, I'm down for some KBBQ. And so it's as simple as that. Even the process of making a decision to even eat, is really simple, just because I know this particular food I really enjoy. And so as soon as someone asks, then I know what my answer is, right? And so knowing who you are, what you feel at the moment, also helps with challenging assumptions. A lot of people, oh, well, you're feeling this or you're feeling that, right? When you ask, are you sad? No, I'm fine. And so just because you don't really know what's going on internally, as soon as you kind of pause, stop and reflect, you're able to communicate what's going on, right? And so lastly, it also helps with communication. You're able to really describe what's going on. And if you're not, that's also okay. It's really a process that happens one day at a time. So how do we improve it? There's a lot of ways, but my top 3 that I really suggest to other folks to do is practicing solitude. And this means finding a time where you don't consume outside information. And so this is, putting away Twitter, putting away TikTok, stop texting your friends. It's just you and your thoughts. I like to make a joke and I'm just like, yeah, it's me and my demons. Just because, sometimes, practicing solitude isn't always very positive. We're so used to being occupied with text with other people's voices, other people's media. It's always an external thing and never essentially a time for ourselves. I usually like to walk or I like to meditate. If I shower, do your face routine, no music. Anytime you have to do a chore, no music, just pause and really just think what's going on in my head. As well as journaling. Journaling is pretty good. You get to explore your wants, needs, and values. For me, the way that it works, I really like to write down everything I do throughout the day, kind of like a to-do list. Because sometimes when I close my laptop, I'm like, wow, time went by. Did I do anything? And then I look at my notebook and I'm like, okay, well, I did this. Well, I did this. And it kind of helps like, hey, I really did occupy my time very meaningfully, but it just doesn't feel like at the end of the day, right? And so it really helps you visualize what you're doing. You may notice patterns in your behavior, in your thoughts, and your beliefs. And sometimes it's difficult to get that like party going right in your journal, but there's a lot of things like my thought diary. You can Google it. It's my thought diary. It kind of gives you like a guide on what to write on, and you have the option of following the guide or not, right? Also, feedback. Feedback is very important. It's important to see things in a different perspective. I personally thought I wasn't good at X, Y, and Z. And whenever I hear feedback on it, and they're like, wow, like you're actually really good at that. Or, hey, let's work on this. You need a little bit of help here. And so it's really important to be able to take critique as help, not necessarily getting attacked or anything like that. It's more of like, hey, let's look at the good and the bad, or the good and the weak, and let's figure out a way to improve it. Kinds of self-awareness that you can also practice. So it's so much more than self-awareness in your own sense, right? We're part of a huge network that's just friends, family, coworkers, peers, pets. There's so much going on that is so beyond us, right? And so the important part is to kind of pause and see how you impact yourself and others and how others impact you. It's always a two-way street, right? So when we're talking about self-awareness, once again, it's the capacity to acknowledge yourself. I like to think of ourselves as always evolving. Who I was my freshman year in high school is completely different from the person that I am now, right? And so that's my own evolution as an individual. Whenever I try to be really self-aware in the present, I kind of ask, how have I changed in the last year? Before the meeting started, Christina had asked me like, hey, like, how many times have you received a scholarship? I feel like I've known you for a bit. And it's only been once. I've only been a OneFuture Coachella Valley Scholar last year. But over the time, I started talking a lot. I started talking a lot over Zoom. And so anytime I had the opportunity to unmute, I would unmute. I would always have my camera on. And so that's something that's completely different to who I was at the very beginning of quarantine. I was like, ooh, webcam on? No, always had it off. And so eventually I just got really comfortable. And thankfully, because of that, I kind of improved my public speaking skills. And I'm not as afraid to, talk to a webcam. So another question, what have I learned about myself? When you ask things about that nature, you kind of get surprised. You start learning, you're a lot more resilient. The fact that we're all still here on Zoom and still trying to get a higher education is a lot. You are very resilient and you're very strong-willed. The fact that you have the ability to, hop on Zoom and still be actively listening. Second question, what holds me back? There are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that are in our control and not in our control. And so it's important to kind of differentiate the two, right? There's no purpose on, worrying about the things you can't control. For me personally, I couldn't control the fact that I was raised in a low socioeconomic household, right? But what I do have control is, improving my grades, getting those scholarships, going to college, getting that higher education, and breaking those generational curses, right? It's not easy, but it's totally feasible. And so when you ask yourself in that situation, what holds me back? Well, is it the fear of leaving your hometown? Is it the fear of possibly, being that first person to leave for college? Or is it, hey, like, am I just a shy person? that holds me back from doing things, from evolving as an individual, right? And lastly, what would I do if I were free of my own barriers and fears? And so last year when I was in your shoes, we had Jason Tate. Hopefully y'all have had a presentation with him, but he made us do kind of like a meditation and kind of draw out our goals, draw out our fears, and then also draw out what would happen if none of those fears existed. And so that was very, very alleviating. I realized a lot like, hey, the barriers, there's not a lot of them. And the ones that are there, there's definitely a lot of people like, and organizations like OneFuture that can definitely help you with those barriers, right? And fears is something that we work internally, and we don't ever have to do it alone. There's always, therapy, there's also friends, there's also, just talking it out and kind of avoiding that internalization. The type of awareness that you can also do is social awareness. And so that means understanding the relationships between you, yourself, and others. And so that means we often, react to different situations in different ways. The same way that I would be talking at a party is not the same way I would be talking at church, right? And so that's what you have to ask yourself. What situations am I comfortable with, and how do I react in them? As a person who was very introverted, it would be ever surprising that I would be at a party. But, I've changed a lot. I've changed a lot through the years, and I've realized, hey, I actually like talking to people as soon as we find something in common. And so that's something you have to think about. Okay, the initial part is kind of uncomfortable, but let's just mention a couple things here and there and hope that we find like a common ground. And then that's when you realize like, hey, talking to strangers is not that bad. Another question that you can ask yourself is, how do I interact with people I don't know? And so that's difficult, but with practice comes perfection. And so it's really about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And also it's important to understand what your kind of communication style is. Some people prefer to text, some people prefer to call, some people prefer to FaceTime. There's so many different communication styles, and the whole point is to figure out your own. And that goes with love languages too. If you haven't heard of love languages, some people really like hugs, very physical touch. Some people like acts of service. Also, like as a Hispanic individual, I know an argument between my mom and I is solved whenever she walks in my room with a bowl of fruit, right? So that's kind of something that communicates, hey, everything is good. She brought me some fruit. It's all good. Like we're back on track. And so it's little things of that nature that kind of, as soon as you understand what a certain behavior means, you get to realize like, hey, it's all back to normal, right? And obviously, once again, that comes with time and practice, and it doesn't have to happen alone. Lastly, another type of awareness that you can practice is organizational awareness. And so this is kind of something that becomes more relevant whenever we start getting into like the nitty-gritty of employment and stuff. And that's kind of understanding your values and norms of a group and finding your place that suits you. This kind of starts with understanding what groups do you belong to. So try to take a look at your family, your friends, your school. I was a big band person. I was like, all right, lunch, I got to go to the band room. And so that's where I found my people, and that's how I started, evolving. I started talking to a lot more people. Also, another question that you can ask yourself is, how do people interact with each other in that group? And am I comfortable with it, right? And so I really like the dynamic of people just talking back and forth. I really like unstructured situations, like where people just, put in their 2 cents here and there and then just get the ball rolling. Whereas like a debate team is a little bit more intimidating for me. You have structure. There is no interrupting. It's like, okay, you talk, now you talk. And it's a complete different structure. And I'm able to recognize which one of the two I'm comfortable with. Again, how do I participate in the group? And so in my situation in the band room, I know that if I found something I needed to say, I could say it no matter where, when, and how. Interrupting people was not necessarily a horrible thing. It was kind of like, let me contribute to the conversation. Whereas like a debate team was a lot more different, right? You can't interrupt or anything of that nature. And so how does a group serve me? And so really asking yourself, am I benefiting from the situation? Also, when I say organizational purposes paired to employment, like really ask yourself, yes, I'm collecting my check, but at what cost? Am I feeling bullied by my coworkers? Am I not feeling, respected by the people here? And it's kind of putting into perspective how the outside makes you feel, right? And just asking yourself, hey, do I feel comfortable in this situation, even if it's in my employer or in the classroom? Do I feel, outcasted? Is the teacher always putting me at the end of the classroom? Things of that nature. So once again, self-awareness can really be really empowering when you take a look at the grand scheme of things. Although the journey to reflecting on who you are what you like or dislike, possibly reliving past traumas is difficult. Remember that it's for a good cause. Most importantly, don't forget that this journey is not to be done alone. It's really about taking a look at your network and your friends, and also you as an individual, and understand that it's really self-improvement and it doesn't need to be done alone. Identity. Identity is being more than just a student, friend, or sibling. So what is identity? We talk about that a lot. Let me see your ID. Let me see who you are. What's your name? When's your birthday? Right? But identity overall is a personal concept each and every one of us develops over the course of our lifetime that defines who we are and our personal sense of who we are. And it's both in and out of our control. So things that are in control are pronouns. I used to go by she, her, hers. And then one day I just, kind of sat there and I'm like, you know what, based on how I live, how I dress, it really varies. I kind of want to identify as she, they. And so that's something that's completely in my control. And something that's completely out of my control is the color of my skin, where I grew up, who my parents were, things of that nature, right? And so some identity factors can be like sexual orientation, pronouns, personality type. Are you outgoing? Are you a wallflower? Are you funny? And your age. Age is a really big thing when it comes to identity, just because let's just say like MySpace used to be a really big thing for folks a lot older than me. And like Twitter is something for our age. And now like TikTok is something that like is for the younger community. And so that really dominates on what your identity is and how you can identify in different groups. Lastly, identity is not fixed. Identity is fluid and continuously changing. So what are some influencers that really impact our identity? It's a huge thing. This little smiley face is you. There are a lot of things that impact us, such as cultural dimensions, ethnicity, gender, your orientation, your religion, systemic factors such as sociocultural, political, economic status, social norms, relationality, your friends, your family, your parents, your siblings. Those all have a huge influence on the way you might express your own identity or create your own identity, as well as personal contextual factors like genetics, disabilities, life transitions, and also all the isms, racism, sexism, homophobia, ageism, classism, and the list goes on. And it really starts with your parents, peers, and is later furthered through experimentation. And so it's really important that, if you're not satisfied with your identity, if you find a couple of barriers trying to express your own identity, understand that it's very intersectional. Intersectional means all this overlapping. There are so many things that really influence who we are at the end of the day. And a really good example where the isms kind of play, identifying part of the LGBT community growing up in a homophobic household. You can't really express, identifying as a transgendered individual in a homophobic household. And that's a really good example where sometimes we identify as one thing, but can't necessarily express it for our own safety. So identity comes with time. Right now, adolescence is the most confusing. We just turned 18, new responsibilities. Imagine you're just graduating high school and somebody tells you like, hey, well, you got to pick a degree that you want to study for the next 4 years and start working in for the rest of your life, right? It's intimidating, confusing, because you also have to establish your own morals. Now, if you move out and start living on campus, you really have to figure out, well, actually, I'm no longer under my parents' roof. You start realizing your own social, political, and economical perspectives. And also you start building a role, such as being a first generation student. Me being an only child raised by a single mother, not having a good family network, it was very difficult to be the first person to leave Desert Hot Springs, going to a college and having to come back and having to explain certain things to my parents that, they don't understand. And I kind of built that role for myself. Also, ongoing life situations can really force us to redefine our identities. Imagine, you got things going on, a breakup happens, and now, you don't have your honey next to you all the time, and you kind of have to redefine your identity as a single individual. New friends and old friends as well. Sometimes, your parents might say, well, if they jump off the cliff, are you going to follow them? And so that's certain things that may happen. You might be meeting new people, and those new people might influence you and show you some things, and they could be good or bad, but you might start embedding them into your own identity. New environments as well. Once I left to college, I was a completely different person. Coming back, my style changed. I just saw so many people dressing differently. I saw so many people listening to different music. I'm a big music person, and so I got exposed to so many different music. And so that's something that that new environment just kind of transformed me in the way that I also expressed myself. Parenthood is another thing that, you're no longer just you. You're always going to have to be taking care of someone. That really shapes who we are and how we behave as a parent. Also, death of a loved one. Death of a loved one is really significant. You go through, the grieving process, the 7 stages of grief, and you might, come out a better or a sad person at the end of the day, but that's always improved with help. There's always help on the way, but it's by no means that, you no longer have an identity. It's about redefining and gaining back control of who we are. So I would like to introduce the topic of congruence. So congruence is the state in which our actual self and our ideal self are similar, right? And so our actual self is kind of who we are at the moment, and our ideal self is who we aspire to be. So when they say, oh, who do you want to be, or what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And so that's kind of something where in this lower left, you kind of see your real self and the ideal self, and the incongruency is when your ideal self and your actual self don't overlap, right? And I kind of have this example of this little kitty. He's a little cat right now, and in the future he hopes to be like a really big lion, really big tiger. This is where the congruency happens, when your actual self is really overlapping with who you actually want to be, right? And so a really good example is SpongeBob. So SpongeBob always wants to be a fry cook, is always very happy to go to work, and he's actually working at the Krusty Krab. And so he's being his ideal self and his actual self, right? And the incongruency happens with Squidward. Squidward really wants to be a clarinetist, but he's actually a cashier. And so a really good example is when he put "Here lies Squidward's hopes and dreams." And you really see the devastation, like he is not happy. Same here. He's not playing the clarinet right now. He's being a cashier, clearly doesn't want to be there. And so that happens with our identity. Most of the times we want to be an X, Y, and Z person, and sometimes we can't. And sometimes it can be because of the isms that I explained earlier, or it can be, a financial situation. You know what I mean? Like the things that I would do to have a Louis Vuitton wallet, but we can't. I don't have the funds right now, right? And so that can be like a thing where I'm not necessarily happy. And so for a good example right now, as Fatima mentioned, I really want to be a psychiatrist, right? But I understand that there's a plan. I still need further education. I still need, to shadow some folks. And in that situation, I can put, my mind at ease. But let's just say down the road, I'm working at a place that I did not want to be, and I still have those dreams of being a psychiatrist. And so that's where that overlapping happens, or that non-overlapping happens. And I'm kind of living an incongruent identity where I'm not being who I actually want to be. How do we work towards our identity? There's a couple steps. I'm just kidding. It's not that simple. There are so many things that you need to do in order to kind of put yourself into perspective of who you are and who you want to be. And so I like to call it your vitals. And so with your vitals, you really want to take a look and evaluate what your values are, your interests are, your temperament. When I talk about values, it's just like, do you like helping people? Is financial security really important? And kind of really understanding what your priorities are as an individual, as well as your interests. What do you pay attention to? What makes you curious? As long as you're doing what you really like to do, then are you really working? You know what I mean? And so it's really important to involve your interests with everything you do. So I really like to listen to music, right? And so anytime I'm doing work, always have something going on, always have new albums in the background, things of that nature. And also your temperament. So this means, are you introverted? Are you extroverted? Are you a planner or are you a freelancer? And so that can also really put into perspective what you involve yourself in. Do you want to be a DJ if you're really introverted? You know what I'm saying? Hosting things if you're, an introverted individual. So that can really put into perspective who you are and how you want to express it. Around the clock is kind of like, are you a morning person or are you a night owl? That can really help, where you put yourself in throughout the day, your life mission as well. What has been the most meaningful event of your life? And that doesn't always have to be positive. For me, it was kind of like, I kind of experienced the medical maltreatment, saw the discrepancies in the Hispanic community when it came to mental health. And so that kind of put me at my life mission to be like, hey, I want to be a speaking Spanish psychiatrist, understand like machismo, understand, the woman's role in the household, even though I don't actually, participate in that. Like, I don't like, doing the traditional Hispanic woman roles, but I understand the hardships that come with that and how, emotions aren't necessarily expressed in the Hispanic community, things of that nature, right? So also skills. What can you do with what you already have? And how can you improve weaknesses? And so I kind of explain this in a more academic, professional way, but you can always put this in the most social way possible. Your vitals will always be applicable to anything you're currently involved in. Try to maybe journal about this when you're done and really answer the question again, who are you? And really focus on the questions of your vitals. So what are the benefits of understanding and expressing you? So when I say you, it's you as your identity, right? And so this means less inner conflict. When you're acting in accordance to your values and beliefs, everything becomes easier. Just because like, do I do this or that? I don't know what I really believe in. I don't know what my morals are. I don't know if I like this or not. And so whenever you kind of understand who you are as an individual, you kind of get rid of that angel and devil situation where rather than questioning, I don't know, it's more of like, I'll do this or I'll do this. And if I don't know, I'm secure enough to experience it and ask myself, how did it make me feel? You also experience personal satisfaction. It's very liberating whenever you're dressing the way you want to. It's very liberating when you're acting the way you want to and just being your true authentic self. And it makes life more exciting when you're actually being who you are and really engaging in your own purpose. And also resistance to social pressure. There's no more yes when you actually meant no, right? And that goes with peer pressure and trying new things where you kind of feel a cognitive dissonance when, your mom used to tell you, don't do this. And then you meet the people that your mom was like telling you not to hang out with, right? And you kind of have that social pressure where you don't know what to behave in. But if you're really grounded and understand, who you are, you kind of become more resistant to that peer pressure. Lastly, living authentically, putting self-awareness and understanding identity together. So self-actualization and congruence. Self-actualization is reaching that top of the top where you're finally you. I like to say we're plants growing towards a light, and that light is self-actualization. That is something we're always going to want to do. And self-actualization is a complete realization of one's potential and the full development of one's own abilities and appreciation of life. There is no more evolving. Like you are at your peak, you are at your final form, like you are happy, right? And so this does not happen overnight, nor does it happen in the span of a day, nor a week, nor a month. It's a life journey, right? And so as I mentioned, this is the happiest I've been in a while, right? Does that mean I will never feel this amount of happiness ever again? Absolutely not. But I did just complete something great, right? I'm a first generation Hispanic woman who just graduated from college. I'm finally, right now I'm at my internship. That's why there's a whiteboard behind me. I've worked really hard and also maintain like a true identity within myself where after work, I still get to go and like make whatever I like to do, like to go make music, like to go hiking. I take care of my plants. So I feel like a really good balance going on, right? Where I get to have my professional life and my own personal life happening together. And that obviously is going to happen sometime in the future once I start school again, right? Where I'm going to feel those different pressures and the journey starts all over again. But I'm a little bit more closer to self-actualization. This is where it comes from. For anyone who's going to study psychology, remember this: Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so this is a theory that says we're always going to start at the bottom. Without water, air, food, shelter, we can't move forward, right? As long as we have these things, we finally have a roof over our head, we have enough nutrition, water, air, then we can move forward, right? Personal security, employment, resources, your own health. Right? If we identify, I have a good roof over my head, I can pay my bills, I'm a healthy person, then I can start worrying about my friendships, worry about my sense of connection. Once I have that, then it moves forward where you start reflecting and worrying about yourself, right? As a human being, we like to worry about our outsides first, and then we put ourselves first. And that's why I say we're biggest critics, because we kind of, help everything around us. And then we start worrying about ourselves, right? So as soon as that happens with your esteem, you're starting to work on it. Hopefully, we got our identity in check. That's when you reach that self-actualization where you're just like, I am me. I have a 6-digit paying job. I am doing everything that I want to do. I have no loans. I feel love and I'm loving, like, you reached your peak. And that obviously, once again, happens over time. Authentic living is really checking in with you, is pausing and saying, hey, am I tense? For example, everyone right now, if you're willing and able to, just raise your shoulders all the way up and just drop them. I like to do that because I start feeling like all the tension that I had in my shoulders. And I'm like, okay, I was kind of stressing. And so you kind of just relax, understanding you and owning it. You have to take responsibility of your choices. And that's saying, I said what I said. And hopefully what you said was respectful. Hopefully what you said was respectful, and you're not being, out of pocket. But it's really taking responsibility of saying, hey, I want to go to school. I'm going to go to this school. You're not going to tell me what school I want to go to. And really just saying, hey, like, this is a career that I want. I'm going to work towards it. And also expressing yourself. Do you feel that you're free to express your views, and can you be yourself every day? And if you answer no to any of those questions, start reflecting and asking yourself why. Furthering that conversation, ask yourself, is it in my control or is it out of my control? And that's when the process starts, right? Just continuously asking why, until you get something that is a good answer for yourself, right? And lastly, being vulnerable. Being vulnerable is a source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If you're being vulnerable and being honest, then you can really say, hey, I did what I did. Let's fix my mistakes, or let's continue the process. And also being empathetic, understanding that all of us have unique different lives, unique different characteristics, unique different abilities, and understanding, everybody's going through it at their own pace, at their own time, and understanding, hey, everything is okay as long as I'm being me, and really achieving towards that self-actualization. So putting two and two together, expressing you and being self-aware, right? So if you're constantly, checking yourself, being aware of who you are, where you are, you have that good combination of confidence, self-esteem, less inner conflict, personal satisfaction, communication, the whole grand slam, right? And that's, really living an authentic life as a person with a purpose, who is not dominated by deadlines, who is not dominated by assignments. At the end of the day, you're so much more than a student. You're so much more than a friend. You're so much more than a cousin, a sibling. You really have to focus and say, who am I? What do I like? And really start living for you and also others, but in a safe way, in a very understanding and like compelling way, being empathetic and compassionate to yourself. Take care of you. That's really the theme for today. With self-awareness and figuring out your identity, it's really a form of self-care. And so the more you do it, it comes with practice. You'll obviously one day master it if you really put an effort to it. If anyone has Notion, hopefully you had like a tech webinar earlier in the summer where you learned about Notion. I love doing Notion because they have like a journal template. Every single day when I have the opportunity, I hop on Notion. I list my intentions, I list happenings. What am I grateful for? Things of that nature. And you really emphasize, how am I feeling internally? Some quick resources. Here in the Valley, we have the All Desert Wellness Center, and they have free services for those above the age of 18. For any of my COD students, feel free to check out their wellness services. They have a lot of student health and counseling, as well as a Desert Flow Resource Center. They're really good when it comes to providing new resources that you might be in need of. And also the Oasis Coachella Center. Definitely recommend going there. It's a big center. It has 2 suites. And definitely, if you ever find yourself in need, feel free to reach out to any of their services. So lastly, thank you so much for having me today. I hope everyone enjoyed the material. I know it was a lot, but I challenge you to end your day today by asking yourself again, who are you? And if you forget, go ahead and use your vitals. So really talking about your values, your interests, things like that, and just trying to figure out, who am I right now and who do I want to be and how do I get there? What's the journey of that? So thank you so much for having me.